We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. And this week's opening quote comes from Martin Luther King. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I'll be your host for the next hour. It is good to forgive people, folks. I know I have certainly forgiven all of those who have wronged me in my life, and there has certainly been a few occasions where this has happened. But really, when you look back at it, folks, it's all about the journey, isn't it? It's about the path. And the ability to forgive is a big part of it. And really, when you look at all the things that have happened to you and how you may have been wronged in the past, it's all really part of the journey, isn't it? And if you're comfortable with who you are right now, then really those wrongs and the things that happened to you and the way you dealt with them and the person you became because of those encounters is part of what made you who you are. It's certainly part of what made me who I am. All of the things that happened to me when I was a child, all the things that happened to me, some of the moments when I was at times of utter despair in my life, some of the lowest periods of my life when I thought the whole world was against me, ultimately turned out to be some of the greatest gifts that were ever given to me, inasmuch as they were gifts of personal understanding, gifts of spiritual growth, gifts of intellectual growth, things that taught me certain truths about myself and certain aspects of myself that I perhaps hadn't been able to face or didn't want to face before. So all the things that happen to us all lead us to a particular point, folks. It's simply how we deal with these things that makes the difference. You can look at these situations as opportunities and choose to grow from them, or you can dwell on them and you can let them eat you up and you basically miss out on your life at that point. I found it's always very good to become an observer of your own life. There comes certain times when you see that this is really the best way through. You kind of put yourself in third-person perspective and you watch your life and you watch it from the view of the observer. And you begin to see things and begin to see how things are played. You begin to start to pick up on little things about yourself that you could perhaps do better. And I've found this to be highly beneficial if one is able to do this. And really, I think it's part of the human experience to be able to learn how to do this. I think it's highly beneficial to be able to do this. And it's good to be able to look at things from this perspective when looking at the system itself as well. And this is why I never really go for anything like violent revolution. I mean, I speak out against the governments. I name the criminals and psychopaths in government for what they are. But I don't ever seek to carry out any acts of violence against them or seek any retribution against them. I don't even wish to have them charged with any crimes. I just want them to stop messing with my brothers and sisters and doing the things that they're doing. And I'm quite happy to forgive these people because I know ultimately that they know not what they do. Even if they're psychopaths, well, that's simply the way they're wired. Ultimately, really, the problem is our acquiescence to this system, our willingness to go along with it rather than challenging it, rather than asking the right questions, rather than always following our moral compass, rather than what the legal guidelines may be. And we always get caught up with our petty little squabbles that happen within the system. And folks, you've got to understand, people within the system, these people are struggling at whatever level they happen to be on. They're still struggling because they're dealing with a false reality. They're living in a matrix. They're living in a world whereby they have to pay to be alive, and they're forced to compete with each other by whatever means are necessary for them to do so. And so it's understandable that many people within this type of social system, especially the people at the lower levels of it, may step outside of the moral boundaries now and then to simply try to put food on the table. And you can't judge these people. In fact, anybody who operates within the parameters of the system really knows not what they do. Because all of these people have been placed into a situation of artificial scarcity and debt slavery by the system itself, and they're forced to operate within psychopathic and sociopathic parameters, no matter how good they may be in their hearts and how well-meaning they may be in their actions and in their beliefs and in what they want to do. Sometimes they're simply forced to do whatever they need to do to survive. So it's important when we look at the system that we step back as an observer as well and see the way people are manipulated within the system into doing things that may not be the best, may not be completely morally sound, may not be completely good or true, but many of them are manipulated and pressured into behaving that way simply because of the system that they are attempting to survive within. That's one of the problems of the Western system, folks, and really most of the social systems on the planet, especially ones that employ the use of a usurious monetary system which is designed to keep people in a state of debt and scarcity and thereby force them into a state of competition, which I do not believe is the natural state of mankind. I believe that we naturally exist within a state of cooperation where we're left to our own devices and left to express our creative ability to the fullest of our potential. So when you look at this, folks, it's important that you don't simply discard those lower levels of society, those lower members of society. You see homeless people, you see people that look like they're misfits, and you can't discard these people. You've got to understand that it is the system that has created these people. The system itself has created this situation that these people are in. Many people simply cannot function within the parameters of the system. I mean, I never could. When I was a child, I was a total misfit when I was a kid because I simply couldn't function within the parameters of the system. I didn't know how to make it work at all. And so it's not surprising that there are many other people out there who simply don't know how to make it work either. And even those who do know how to make it work, who may be quite high on the social or business ladders, on the rungs of the business world, and they may be behaving in quite a sociopathic manner, you can't judge these people as being necessarily bad for what they do because they are simply locked into the mindset of the system and they're operating within these parameters, and these parameters themselves are sociopathic and psychopathic. And it is the system which forces people to basically adopt personalities which may not be their natural type of demeanour were they left to their own devices. And so we need to put down all the judgment, folks. We really do. We've got to step back and be an observer of this system, an observer of the different rungs of the social ladder and how people behave on them, and see what the root cause of the problem is, and take the necessary steps to actually deal with that problem. But without respect, we're not going to get anywhere, folks. So we have to put down all this division. We've got to take this observer perspective so we really can see things for what they are, which gives us the ability to do so. But we've got to be truthful as well, folks. We really do. I mean, we can take this observer status, and we can take this observer attitude, and we can keep forgiveness in our hearts, but we also have to be observant, and we have to call things for what they are. I mean, when I look at the politicians who run this country, like I said earlier, I have no problem in naming them as the psychopaths that they are and calling them out for what they do. But again, I don't really wish to hurt them. I just want them to stop what they're doing, and that's not going to happen unless people are honest enough to actually call things for what they are. And that is why I have no problem at all calling people like Tony Abbott out as the criminals that they are, calling Bronwyn Bishop out as the moron and criminal that she is. I mean, this is a woman that's supporting war crimes simply by her support for Israel, because Israel is a terrorist state carrying out war crimes. And anybody who doesn't admit that is simply lying to themselves. But again, you can be honest about it, folks, but don't blame the people of Israel. You've got to forgive the people of Israel, because the people of Israel are programmed into what they do. They have no idea what they're doing. They're programmed into this victim mentality whereby they think the entire world wants to kill them. And really, the entire world is annoyed with Israel because of its actions, and its actions are being carried out because it believes the entire world wants to kill it. It's a really vicious circle that it's got itself locked into. But all of the animosity that you see directed towards the Jewish people is really because of the actions of the State of Israel. And Israel is carrying out those actions because of the victim mentality it deliberately instills into its populace. And so you have to forgive them. You can't blame them for what they do, because if you were being raised in that situation, you would probably do the same thing. That's the problem, folks, and we just don't look at it that way. We tend to make a blanket statement and condemn an entire country due to the actions of its government, but we don't ever consider why the country thinks the way it does. I mean, look at America. America is almost an adolescent culture. It's almost a childlike culture. And honestly, folks, I love American people. I do. I love American people. All the Americans I've met have been wonderful people. Very kind, very gentle, very caring people. But you look at the nation on a whole, and it's absolutely disgraceful. But again, that is because of the actions of the government, and you've got the population of the country who are fed disinformation, false information, and delivered a completely unrealistic version of reality by their television every day, so they don't know what's going on. Most of the people in the United States don't even know the names of half of the countries outside of their border. They don't even know what's going on in the rest of the world. All they know is what their media tells them, and all they know is that America is a bastion of freedom that is going out and attempting to help the rest of the world when nothing could be further from the truth. So you can't really blame the people of America for their support of their governments or for what they do in general because of the information that they're fed and the training and programming that they are subject to, which causes them to behave in this way and think in the manner in which they do. And so again, you have to forgive them for their actions, folks. And look, I know it's hard. I really do. I mean, it's hard to forgive people sometimes, but it needs to be done. Personally, I find it a lot easier to forgive the people of Israel than I do to forgive people like members of the government. I find it a lot easier to forgive the people of Israel than I do to forgive someone like Tony Abbott, because Tony Abbott consciously knows what he's doing. I mean, the people of Israel are programmed the same as the way any people are programmed, the same as the way the people of America are programmed, the same as the way the people of Australia or even China are programmed. But it's different for the politicians. Tony Abbott knows that he's cutting a hole through the Great Barrier Reef and destroying the Great Barrier Reef. He knows that half of the nation has been sold to China and that they're going to rip up all of our food bowl and that it's going to place Australians in an incredible state of hardship in the future. We're not going to be able to produce our own food. He knows he's selling us down the river. He knows that coal seam gas mining is destroying the water table. He knows that fluoride is poisoning the people and keeping them dumb. He knows exactly what he's doing because he's a bought and sold little sociopathic cretin who works for corporate interests and not for the people of his country. So it's very difficult to forgive him. But again, you have to because he's just a trained puppet. He's a trained monkey who's doing what his masters tell him. And he's such a moronic little sociopath that he really has blinkers on in regard to the future of mankind, I think. I mean, he's almost a non-human, Tony Abbott. He really is. He's like a genetic throwback of some kind. And you really look at the Liberal Party, and this is what you got. I mean, Bronwyn Bishop and these people, these are utter morons, folks. You can't really judge them as being bad because they're not real human beings. They simply don't think the way normal people do. They're obviously mentally impaired. They obviously have no empathy for people, are pure sociopathy personified. So it's very, very difficult to blame them for what they do. But again, because they are aware of it, it does make it also very difficult to forgive them for their actions. But again, that's a test for us, folks. I mean, I can forgive Tony Abbott. I can forgive Bronwyn Bishop. Doesn't mean I'll ever trust them, but I can forgive them. And that is a good test for me. That's a good test of my own personal strength, and I'm able to do that. And so that is a personal goal that I can achieve by doing that. I achieve nothing by hating them. I achieve nothing by hating anybody. I don't know how to hate folks. I don't really know how to hate anybody. I've had all sorts of bad things happen to me in my life. I've had plenty of opportunities and plenty of excuses to hate people. I suppose that even in some way, hatred towards some people in my life could be well justified. But it's simply not a pathway I'm prepared to go down. Sure, there have been moments in my life when I was younger when I was incredibly angry and I'm very outspoken and almost violent in my talk towards people. But I've never hit anybody. I've never done anything violent to anybody. Not in my entire life have I ever thrown a punch at another person. And I've never done anything hateful. I've never done anything that actually contained malicious intent. I may have done the wrong thing sometimes, but I never actually intended to do the wrong thing. And so that's just a sort of a person I am, folks. I find it very difficult to hate anybody. I find it a lot easier to forgive people than to hate people. And I think forgiveness is a big part of it. Forgiveness is something that we all need to embrace because forgiveness is character building. Forgiveness is actually a strength that you can attain yourself, and it's a very, very hard barrier to overcome. But if you can put forgiveness in your heart and look at this global situation and then apply yourself to this global situation with righteous anger and righteous indignation, but without any animosity, without any hatred, and with forgiveness in your heart, then I think we can really make a difference. I mean, that's the key, folks. We can't just go out there and be aggressive and stomp all over everybody who's ever done the wrong thing by us. If we do that, we're going to find that most of the world is going to get trodden on because everybody's going to have some little bone to pick with everybody else. And really, they have to step above it and realize that it's all been a result of the system itself. And so that's where the focus needs to be. And it has to come from respect.